Hello and welcome to this video on different tape formulations for the uTapescrubber. So as part of the project I've been having to make loads of these tape loops, and I think some people might have seen this. I came up with this weird contraption one day for making my loops, but more about that later. Yeah, I've been finding that I'm getting different results, depending on what tape I'm using, and I mean that's kind of obvious. There were lots of different formulations of tape, type 1, type 2 and type 3, from your standard ferric to your chromium to your metals, and yeah, I thought it would be cool to do a video about how you can get the most out of your tape scrubber by choosing the right tape. So each module gets calibrated by hand, and what I'm effectively looking for when I'm setting the levels is to get it, a reproduction of 1-to-1 in and out. And that wasn't always happening. I was finding variations with some tapes getting below what I wanted, and with other tapes, with everything set the same, I'd then get maybe, a result that was over the reproduction I was expecting. So this is kind of cool because in some respects the tapes that are playing back louder, it means that they're able to absorb, I guess, a magnetic flux more easily. They're more permeable, I guess you could think about it like that. And some of them, are then able to have a kind of higher headroom, lower noise floor, things like that, because we can adjust the gain stage afterwards down. But anyway, if you are interested in setting your levels, some of the later models have a trim pot for the playback amplifier, but if you haven't, something you might be able to do to get the kind of levels you want is choose the right formulation of tape. So as I mentioned, there's 3 kind of different types. We're going to be mainly looking at type 1 because that's what I've standard ferric type, that's what I've designed this machine for. The machines that use chrome and even more the metal ones, they're, let's put it this way, a dictaphone's probably not the way to be doing it. Okay, but I kept a couple of those in just to show what happens when we use them. So sourcing your tapes, you can see here I've got like 12 different types which I've just selected from my workshop. Big ups to Steve, who gave me a big job lot of tapes, and they've been lasting me really well. Found some really cool ones in here, as well as your standard kind of, I guess, more common tapes like D90s and Sony HF90s, that kind of stuff, Max UR90s. We've got some kind of more mid-range ones. There's a AD90, an AR90, a UDIS60, which is by Maxil, and yeah, this Sony, which is quite well rated out there, HFS. So what I did was I made a tape loop out of each of these formulations. At the same time, before I made the loop, I recorded 2 of them using my Marantz. I wanted to kind of use them as calibration tapes as well. As part of the calibration of this, I'll have to set the head and set the azimuth. I think that's how we pronounce it. But in fact, what we're looking at is the tilt of the head. This can have a huge effect on the recording and reproduction of sound. It could even be used as a filter, and I've kind of been thinking about that maybe later on, some kind of like wah-wah bar on a head, so you can do some low-pass filtering with it. Because what happens is, as soon as we tilt the head out of alignment with the tape, the high frequencies just completely roll off. I mean, they're already rolling off with tape anyway. I mean, it becomes more like a cliff edge. You need a hazard sign near it, it's that sharp. But anyway, so I've been testing it like that. I've got all these different tapes, and what was interesting was the reproduction levels. In some cases you wouldn't get as what you put in. If you put it, you'd get -3, -6 dB. Some cases 0 dB at the end, and in other cases again we would have a louder signal. So this was interesting. It kind of matched my experiences with my machine. So it made me think, okay, this is something normal. I'm thinking more about my tape machine now, and I would really like it to have a high, low, medium setting for the inputs and the output stages, separate to the mixing stage, because there are times where we're going to want to force the levels in, or maybe boost the output replay, say if we're going slower. So that's something to think about later, and there is going to be an announcement about that, because that's something I've been thinking about, and yeah, let's put it this way, there might be an announcement about that. But so it meant that, this is normal. Other tape machines do it. So when I went and tested it on my machine, found those levels were similar, but I was able to then calibrate this head because I knew my Marantz was set well. I calibrated this and all the others, and then I was able to test recording and playing back. So the results are, I'm not going to bore you with every single tape on here, but I think I want to tell you about some of the three most interesting ones to me, and just results that I think you should know about. Using chrome tape really doesn't work. Like, for example, this SA90 or a BASF CR2. Being chrome, they need much higher bias signals to impart a strong enough signal. They are quite clean. You get about I think we've got 6 volt, so I made a very professional SA90 6 volt peak to peak at the end, so we're getting less than we put in. This was all tested with a 10 volt peak to peak sine signal at 1 kilohertz going in. So yeah, that's the first tip. Avoid chrome, and especially metal tapes. So then, looking at kind of what we've got left over, using D90s and things like C90s, these very kind of very standard tape that you're going to see out there, common ones like these. What else? And surprisingly, this one, which is actually considered a bit more mid-range, but in this example, I only got 10 volts peak to peak out, but a good reproduction of what we wanted. What went in came out. But then I was really surprised by these ones that are circled. So the Sony HFS, which I mentioned earlier, this gave effectively 20% higher reproduction. Same with this BASF LF Super 1. Was really surprised by that one, actually. 12.5 volts, so we're getting 25% extra signal. And now this one blew me away, and I don't know whether I should go and buy as many as I can on eBay now, but unbelievable, really. When you look at those results, effectively you got like a 40% higher reproduction. And the interesting thing about the signal on this, I won't play you hard like noisy 1 kilohertz sine signals now, but there we go. I've got my own sirens and signals in the background there. Just really surprised by that. Also the soft clipping, which is something I should talk about with all these tapes. That's kind of what's happening. We are pushing the levels. So we are kind of in the saturation range with all of these tests. But this one still had a really... I think I could even push it further. So I'm going to buy a load more of these. But interestingly, that one is still only considered a mid-range. There is actually an ARX90. So I've ordered one of those on eBay to try out. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I hope this has been kind of helpful to anyone who's making their own loops and trying different formulations for the uTapescrubber, or just interested in different types of formulation, like the actual science of what's going on here. You go from the standard ones, there's kind of micro particle ones, and then later on there's some type 1 that have cobalt mixes in. That's way beyond the scope of what I can kind of talk about now. But also I think it's just important to get off forums sometimes and just actually do it and try it and see what happens. And these results would vary. We're using, you know, my uTape scrubber. It's got an AC bias level of 40 volts peak to peak. I've kind of set it at that point, which is maybe a bit lower than, you know, I'd want for really, really high reproduction. But what it does allow is sound on sound. You know, when what I found is when we record over a previous signal, it kind of, the new signal is imparted and the previous signal is reduced by about 6 dB. You know, it kind of drops half. If we lowered the bias signal on this, the remaining signal when we record over something would be higher, but then we're offsetting that against record quality. So I found this was a good point. Also, just a note on that, I'm going to add a AC bias adjustment for later versions. I think this is going to be quite interesting because we could, you know, I've talked about having a lo-fi hi-fi switch, but, you know, having a full control and maybe CV over that as well, that's really interesting to me now. But anyway, I could go on and on and on, and I do. But thanks for listening, and if you have any comments or like tips for other people about these, something I want to talk about later and do the next video on, I might talk about this, but you know, this was just the result of me messing around for a day until everything came together. And it's interesting, it's kind of like there's a cool story about a guy who went to travel at sea, and, you know, he made his raft, and then everything just seemed to come together, almost like, you know, as he put it out to sea, he found that the wood swelled, and this made the ropes bind better. You know, he found that fish would flop onto the deck for breakfast, you know, and a bit like this, as I was making it, it was just hilarious. I kind of watched it, and what was really interesting was using the way that, like, the way the tape wanted to go. I didn't force it. If you let it fall over here and then just turn this rotates the wheel, pushing it round, and then it comes back and folds back under itself. I mean, it's almost like it wanted to do it. But I'm hoping that's going to speed things up and making these loops. So this brings me to my next point. I've made these available on my website now. It's super hard to get these tapes with the screws, but I've been able to source enough now to kind of make them available. And this is something I've been experimenting with, and I need to make a video on it, which is adding bearings to microcassettes to get these super smooth results. In fact, I might just pop that in now just to show you, since there's been no audio. We've just got some radio noise. I don't know what it was. But cool thing is now, it goes super smooth, like both ways. So yeah, thanks for checking out the project, and until next time, peace, love and tape loops. Bye now.